I'm sure you've had the experience of seeking justice and coming to the realization that it might be impossible in this particular case. We can look at so many situations in our world and think, how are we going to come to a truly just situation? We can think about wars, we can think about movements of people, we can think about people that are suffering absolute want, and how are we going to get to a place of justice? And so often we can feel helpless when we're facing these situations. And so the woman of today's gospel, her experience isn't so far away from what we experience so often. And she's suffering this injustice in a very particular way because she goes to an unjust judge. And this is horrible, one of the worst things that can happen, because the judge is the one who has all of the power. And if he is unwilling to help her in her need, well, then who else can she turn to? And so we can ask, is she being righteous or is she just complaining? And what's going on with the judge? And do we ever fall into some of those same attitudes? We have to recognize that compassion sees the person, not just the problem. And that's something we have to apply to our own lives, to our own world, to our own society. Have you ever noticed how many people are wanting to make us mad? I recently learned this new word or new concept of rage baiting, right? This is where somebody, is kind of like poking at you in order to make you react. And it's not a new concept, but perhaps it's taken on a special character nowadays. Now, I'm not talking about like ordinary things, like we've all been there, the work kitchen where somebody just kind of leaves their dirty plates there. Not a happy moment, but also not the end of the world. But there's bigger things. There's bigger things where people are trying to inspire this rage in us, that they're trying to make us mad, where they're trying to sow division. And I think that whenever we get upset, we should ask ourselves, who wants me to feel this way? And is this person truly looking out for my good? And so often that's not going to be the case. Maybe there is some injustice there. Maybe I have something that I can do about it, and so then I have to act. But so often when we're hearing the news or just listening to other people and we have this, we think righteous anger surging up in our hearts, or we're actually mistaken about why that's coming about. We tend to have an innate respect for justice and easily complain when we feel that it's not there. The judge in the town neither feared God nor respected any human being. How often do we meet people like this? People that are just completely into themselves, completely out there to get what they want, don't care at all about anybody else. They attempt to impose their will while ignoring the fact that we are seeking peace and justice. What can we do when we suffer injustice? This might come from our family, from a friend group, a professor, difficult boss. The unjust judge embodies the tension between authority and injustice, forcing us to confront the reality of unyielding power and its implications for our lives. Injustice leaves us feeling incomplete, even blaming ourselves for the situation we're in. It takes a lot to make us speak out. It seems that the woman in the gospel suffered a lot and was at her wit's end when she finally confronted the judge. Sometimes we might feel like we have to choose between fairness and inner peace. We can become discouraged when we realize that fairness and inner peace do not always go together. It can be costly to deal with confrontation. We fear the crucial conversations, especially when we have little hope for success. This hopelessness might even be more discouraging than the original problem we were facing. What if your silence isn't protecting your peace, but actually just weighing you down more? Now, different personalities deal with this in different ways. Some might explode in anger, others go quiet. What do you do? What can I do to fix an unjust situation? This is a big question because so often we're just being told, okay, you got to do this. I think the first thing we always have to do is pray. To pray really about it, and to pray and to let God know our true emotions what do we feel about this? I see this person who's suffering, and I don't like that, God. Like it's not fair. Like we can even complain a little bit to God sometimes. It's not always a bad thing. And we need to pray for humility, because maybe I'm getting offended for the wrong reasons, because of my pride, because of my self-centeredness, and not out of true compassion. I might be less concerned with that person that's suffering and more concerned with what political gain I might be able to make. So we have to pray. Then maybe we consult with a friend or a mentor, somebody who can kind of help guide me, be a sounding board, help me to see, am I being objective here, or am I just making this all about myself? And then third, the hard part, to act, which isn't always doing something. Sometimes we might have to choose, okay, well, I'm going to wait on this. But there's so many times when we are called to act. And so then we have to do it decisively and throw all of our spirit, all of our soul, all of our efforts into making that justice come about. We might have to have a crucial conversation. We might have to write a letter. We might have to go to the person at the root of the situation and explain our experience. And this should open up a conversation that helps to resolve the issue. If only it were always so easy. We've all had times when speaking doesn't make it better. And sometimes the best thing is to let it go. But for our own peace of mind, it's important to recognize that this is an option and not merely a resignation, so that we don't fall into feelings of helplessness and distress. Faith perseveres when the world's justice isn't enough, trusting God to bring ultimate justice. And this is something that's important too, in coming at this from a spirit of faith, recognizing that what we don't accomplish in our own lives, well, God will accomplish in eternity. And I think that was a consolation for this widow as well, that she knew that maybe she wasn't going to get everything she deserved, but she did trust in God. So for us, this week, think about an unjust situation in your life. Pray about it with humility. Consult somebody with honesty, and then act with courage. Justice may not come as quickly as we would like, but God never ignores our cries. Keep praying, keep trusting. He is faithful. God bless.